The wrench slipped from my grease-stained fingers as I heard my 16-year-old daughter's voice cut through the garage like a rusty blade. If Dad was actually a man, maybe you wouldn't need Wade. I hope you finally leave him. I lay there under my '67 Mustang, staring at the oil-stained concrete ceiling of my shop, letting those words sink in like motor oil into a clean rag. Nothing like a midnight heartburn, special courtesy of my own flesh and blood. My name is Brock Sullivan, and I've been fixing broken things for 20 years in this rust bucket town called Sullivan's Forge. Yeah, named after my great-grandfather, who built the steel mill that's been rotting away since the 80s. Funny how everything in this place eventually turns to scrap metal, including marriages. The irony wasn't lost on me that I could rebuild a transmission, but apparently couldn't keep my own family from falling apart. I rolled out from under the Mustang and wiped my hands on my coveralls, listening to my wife. Tessa's voice drifted through the thin walls between my shop and our house. "Chloe, keep your voice down. Your father might hear." Too late for that, sweetheart. These walls were about as soundproof as tissue paper, which I'd discovered the hard way over the years. Tessa Sullivan, 36 years old, recently glowed up, as Chloe would say. New haircut that probably cost more than most people's car payments. New wardrobe that made our credit card statements look like phone numbers, and apparently a new attitude to match. She worked for Riverside Property Development, doing something with marketing that paid better than my auto shop, but not nearly enough to afford the designer clothes that had suddenly appeared in our closet like expensive ghosts. I'd been married to Tessa for 17 years, and I thought I knew her tells, the way she'd bite her lower lip when lying about grocery money, how she'd avoid eye contact when she'd spent too much at Target, the nervous laugh when she was hiding something. But this new Tessa was a stranger wearing my wife's face, and she'd apparently graduated from the advanced course in deception. "Wade understands me," Tessa was saying to Chloe. "He listens when I talk about my dreams, my goals. He sees potential in me." And what did I see? Apparently not much according to my own family. Wade Thompson. Even his name sounded like it came with a trust fund and a polo shirt. The next morning brought its usual parade of broken-down dreams on 4 wheels. I was elbow-deep in Mrs. Patterson's transmission when my neighbor Rex shuffled over, coffee mug in hand and gossip on his lips. Rex was 73, retired from the mill, and had nothing better to do than watch the neighborhood through his kitchen window like it was his personal reality show. The man could have been a private investigator if he'd applied half the energy he spent on neighborhood surveillance. "Brock, I probably shouldn't say anything, but..." Rex always started his best. Gossip this way, like a disclaimer that somehow absolved him of responsibility for the verbal grenades he was about to lob. "But you're going to anyway," I said, not looking up from the engine. Rex's gossip was like the weather, inevitable and usually depressing. "Saw Tessa with that Wade fellow yesterday evening leaving the new condos on Riverside Drive. Wasn't her car neither." Rex's delivery was casual, but his eyes held that predatory gleam of someone delivering bad news wrapped in false concern. I straightened up, wiping my hands on a rag that had seen better decades. "What time?" "Around 7, right when you're usually closing up shop." Rex's watery blue eyes held that mix of sympathy and excitement that people get when delivering bad news. They looked comfortable together, real comfortable, if you catch my meaning. I caught his meaning all right. In a town the size of Sullivan's Forge, comfortable was code for doing things married people shouldn't be doing, with other people's spouses. That evening, the real discovery came from an unexpected source. I was nursing a beer and pretending to watch TV when Chloe sprawled on our couch, scrolling through Instagram with the focused intensity of a scholar studying ancient texts. Suddenly, she sat up straight like she'd been electrocuted. "Dad, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaky in a way that made my stomach drop. My daughter had always been closer to her mother, especially lately. Hell, they'd formed their own little anti-Brock alliance, complete with eye rolls and synchronized sighs whenever I spoke. But something in her tone made me set down my beer and walk over, dreading what I was about to see. She handed me her phone, and what I saw made my blood run cold enough to freeze antifreeze. It was an Instagram story from last weekend, Tessa's bachelorette party in Vegas, that I'd helped pay for like the world's most generous cuckold. The video showed my wife at some upscale club that looked like it charged cover fees and blood samples, surrounded by 4 different men, not just talking or dancing, grinding, kissing, hands everywhere like some twisted game of Twister. The caption read, "Last night with her side guy before she locks down the rich one." The exclamation point felt like a slap across my face. "Taylor posted this," Chloe whispered, referring to her friend who apparently had all the discretion of a town crier. She was drunk and thought it was funny, but Dad, that's not how married women should act. Out of the mouths of babes. My 16-year-old daughter had more moral clarity than my wife of 17 years. I screenshotted everything before it could disappear into the digital ether like it never happened. Then I did something I'd never done before, something that went against every principle of trust and privacy I'd been raised with. I went through Tessa's phone while she was in the shower, feeling like a burglar in my own home. Her Venmo history told a story I wasn't prepared for, like a novel written in financial transactions. Payments to Brett M. and Danny K. and Alex R. with notes like, "Thanks for Vegas, baby," and "Round 2 soon." Each transaction felt like a small knife twist, documenting my wife's infidelity in convenient digital receipts. The modern age had made cheating so much more efficient and so much easier to track. But the message that made me see red was buried in her text thread with her sister Paige. "Brock's such a fucking grease monkey. Once I'm done with this marriage, Wade and I can really start living." The Bachelorette party was just practice for my new life. These small-town losers have no idea what real success looks like. Grease monkey? 20 years of building a business from nothing, supporting a family, keeping this town's cars running when the economy went to hell, and I was a grease monkey. I'd kept her car running, kept our bills paid, kept our daughter fed and clothed, but apparently none of that qualified as real success in her newly refined worldview. I screenshotted everything, my finger trembling on the phone like I was defusing a bomb. Then I closed it and sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence of my marriage's end, feeling like I was holding my own death certificate. The house felt different now, not like home, but like a crime scene where I was both the victim and the detective. The next morning, I decided to deliver some truth along with Wade's car repair. Wade Thompson worked at Riverside Property Development in a glass office building that looked like it had been dropped into Sullivan's Forge by mistake, probably by the same aliens who thought putting a Starbucks next to a shuttered factory was good urban planning. Everything else in town was brick and rust, weathered by decades of industrial decline, but Wade's workplace was all clean lines and modern pretension, like a spaceship that had landed in a junkyard. I'd fixed Wade's BMW twice in the past year, minor stuff, but enough to know he was the type who complained about every bill and acted like paying for honest work was beneath him. He'd stand there in his pressed khakis and button-down shirt, looking at my coveralls like I might contaminate his precious German engineering just by breathing on it. Now that I knew why Tessa was attracted to him, it all made perfect sense. Wade represented everything she thought she wanted: money that came easy, status that didn't smell like motor oil, and a life that looked good in Instagram photos. I parked my tow truck in the visitor spot like I belonged there, which technically I did. I was providing a service after all, just not the service they were expecting. I walked into the lobby carrying a clipboard and wearing my cleanest coveralls, the ones reserved for court appearances and funerals. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly straightened hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked at me like I might track mud on her pristine floors, or, God forbid, make the place smell like actual work. "I'm here to deliver some paperwork to Wade Thompson," I said, "about his BMW repair." She directed me to the third floor with the kind of forced politeness usually reserved for dealing with potentially dangerous wildlife. I took the elevator up, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break free and run away from what I was about to do. Through the glass walls of Wade's office, I could see him leaning over Tessa's shoulder as she sat at his computer, both of them absorbed in whatever was on the screen. Her hand was resting on his thigh like she owned it, which, considering recent developments, she apparently thought she did. They looked like a couple of teenagers passing notes in study hall, if teenagers wore business casual and had 401k plans. I knocked on the door and walked in without waiting for permission. In my experience, asking permission just gave people time to say no. "Mr. Thompson, I have your repair estimate," I said, holding up the clipboard like a shield. Tessa spun around in the chair so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash, her face going white as fresh paint. "Brock, what are you doing here?" "Working," I said, keeping my voice level as a carpenter's square. Unlike some people, apparently. Wade stood up, smoothing his tie with the practiced motion of someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of looking important. He was about my height, but softer, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses instead of honest work, and hands that had never known the kiss of a wrench or the bite of engine grease. "Is there a problem, Mackenzie?" Wade's voice carried the entitled tone of someone who'd never had to work for anything in his life. "No problem at all," I said, pulling out my phone and snapping a quick photo of the two of them before they could react. "Just documenting the work environment for insurance purposes." "You can't just," Tessa started, but I cut her off. "Actually, I can. Public building, business hours, and I'm here on official repair business." I handed Wade the clipboard with the satisfaction of a process server delivering a subpoena. "Your estimate's on top. The rest is just some light reading about professional conduct and workplace relationships." I'd printed out the Instagram screenshots, the Venmo payments, and the text messages, attaching them to the repair estimate like the world's most damaging paperwork. Wade's face went from confused to furious as he read, his professional composure cracking like cheap paint in the sun. "You went through private communications," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Shared cloud account," I replied with a shrug. "Amazing what people leave lying around when they think they're smarter than everyone else." I turned to leave, then paused at the door like I just remembered something important. "Oh, and Tessa, don't wait up tonight. I'll be working late." The irony wasn't lost on me that I was borrowing her own excuse. In the parking garage, I found Wade's BMW and pulled out my keys. Across the driver's side door, I carved cheater in letters 6 inches tall, each stroke feeling like a small victory. Then, I slipped a fake parking ticket under his windshield wiper, one I'd made on my computer that morning, complete with official-looking letterhead and a fine for infidelity in a no-moral zone. Sometimes the best revenge was the kind that made people laugh at your enemy's expense. That evening, I got my first anonymous text. "You're playing with fire. Stay out of it." I texted back, "I don't burn, I smelt." Let them chew on that for a while, but the war had officially begun, and I'd just fired the opening shot. Word travels fast in a town the size of Sullivan's Forge, where gossip moved faster. Then a NASCAR pit crew, and was twice as destructive. By the end of the week, everyone knew about Tessa and Wade. The story had grown in the telling, of course. That's what happens when you feed rumors through the small-town gossip mill. Some versions had them running off to Tahiti. Others had them planning to turn the steel mill into a luxury resort. The truth was probably more mundane, but truth was never as entertaining as fiction in Sullivan's Forge. The gossip mill ran on coffee and judgment, and both were in abundant supply at Cole's bar, where I found myself drinking more often than usual. Not enough to be a problem, but enough to take the edge off the particular brand of humiliation that comes with being cuckolded in public. Cole Anderson had been my friend since high school, back when we thought we knew everything, and the world was going to bend to our will through sheer teenage confidence. He'd been a cop for 15 years, before a knee injury during a domestic violence. Call forced him into early retirement, and now he ran the only decent bar in town. Cole had seen enough human nature to know that everyone had a breaking point, and he could tell I was approaching mine like a freight train approaching a damaged bridge. "You want some advice?" Cole asked, polishing a glass behind the bar with the methodical precision of a man who'd found peace in routine. "Do I have a choice?" I knew Cole well enough to know he was going to share his wisdom, whether I wanted it or not. "You want revenge? Hit them where it hurts, but don't get your hands dirty and don't do anything that'll land you in jail." He set the glass down and looked at me directly. "Prison orange would clash with your complexion." "What's that supposed to mean?" Cole leaned across the bar, lowering his voice like he was sharing state secrets. "It means you're smarter than both of them combined. Use that. They think they're playing chess, but you know how to flip the board." The next blow came at Chloe's basketball game, where I'd been a fixture for 3 years, sitting in the same spot in the bleachers like a loyal mascot, cheering for a daughter who increasingly acted like I embarrassed her just by existing. I'd missed exactly 2 games in 3 seasons. Once for the flu, and once when Mrs. Patterson's car caught fire in my shop. This time, Tessa showed up with Wade, making their grand entrance like they were walking a red carpet instead of entering a high school gymnasium that smelled like floor wax and teenage anxiety. They walked in holding hands, Tessa wearing a new dress that probably cost more than most people in town, made in a week. The kind of dress that screamed, "I'm sleeping with someone who has money," to anyone with eyes. Wade had his arm around her waist like he was claiming territory, and they found seats directly across from me, making sure everyone could see them together. The whispers started immediately, rippling through the crowd like wildfire through dry grass. Parents who'd known Tessa and me for years suddenly found their phones fascinating, while the few who made eye contact offered sympathetic smiles that made me feel like a charity case. I was becoming the town's official cautionary tale, the husband who didn't see it coming. At halftime, Wade approached me with the confidence of a man who thought he'd already won the war. He walked with the swagger of someone who'd never been punched in the face, which was an oversight I was increasingly tempted to correct. "Brock, we should talk," he said, his voice carrying the condescending tone of a manager explaining layoffs. "Should we?" I stayed seated, forcing him to look down at me like the superior being he clearly believed himself to be. "Tessa deserves to be happy. Maybe if you'd been more of a man, she wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." The words hung in the air like a bad smell, and the gym fell silent around us as people strained to hear every word of what was clearly going to be the entertainment portion of the evening. I stood up slowly, looking Wade in the eye, taking my time to let the moment build. In my peripheral vision, I could see phones coming out, fingers poised to record what everyone sensed was about to become legendary. "You know what, Wade? You're absolutely right." His smug smile faltered slightly, like he'd been expecting an argument and got agreement instead. "If I had been more of a man," I continued, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I would have thrown out the trash years ago instead of letting it pile up in my house. Now, listen here. No, you listen." I stepped closer, and Wade instinctively backed up, his bravado evaporating like morning mist. "You think you've won something? You think taking my cheating wife is some kind of prize?" I laughed, and it echoed through the quiet gym like a gunshot. "Congratulations, Wade. You've won yourself a woman who spent her bachelorette party with 4 different men while planning to divorce her husband for money. I'm sure she'll be completely faithful to you." The crowd murmured, and a few people actually chuckled. Wade's face turned red as a brake light, his professional composure finally cracking under the weight of public humiliation. "That's enough!" Tessa's voice cut through the tension like a referee's whistle. She had appeared beside Wade, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "You're right," I said, grabbing my jacket. "It is enough. I'm done pretending this is a marriage worth saving." As I headed for the exit, I turned back to address the entire gym. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make an announcement. My wife, Tessa, and her boss, Wade, would like everyone to know that they're officially together. Please join me in wishing them all the happiness they deserve." I started clapping slowly. After a moment, a few other people joined in, whether out of support for me or just awkwardness, I couldn't tell. But the sound of that scattered applause followed me out into the parking lot like a victory song. That night, I made my decision. I wasn't going to be the bigger man anymore. I wasn't going to handle this with quiet dignity. They wanted a villain. Fine, let's play. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it happened fast. I stopped trying to save my marriage and started treating it like a business problem that needed solving. I had assets, resources, and a network of people who respected honest work over corporate backstabbing. First, I had a conversation with Lance Rivers, who owned the biggest construction company in town and happened to be one of Wade's biggest competitors. Lance was old school Sullivan's Forge, built like a bulldozer, honest as the day was long, and about as subtle as a sledgehammer when someone crossed him. "Lance, you know I don't usually get involved in business politics," I said, sitting in his office that smelled like sawdust and coffee, surrounded by blueprints and safety awards. "But I thought you should know that Wade Thompson's been using inside information from his girlfriend to bid on your projects." I showed him the screenshots of Tessa's messages about upcoming opportunities and ways to beat the competition. Lance's face darkened as he read, his jaw tightening like he was chewing nails. "This is insider trading bullshit," he growled. "I've been wondering how that slick bastard keeps underbidding us on projects he shouldn't know about." "Thought you should know," I said, standing to leave. By the end of the week, Tessa was called into HR for a meeting about professional conduct and potential ethics violations. Wade got a formal reprimand, was removed from 3 major projects, and found himself under investigation for corporate espionage. Funny how quickly workplace romance loses its charm when it comes with legal implications, but I wasn't done. Not even close. The annual Sullivan's Forge block party was held every September in the parking lot of the old steel mill, where my great-grandfather had once forged the backbone of American industry and where now we held bake sales and craft fairs, like we were conducting surgery on a corpse. It was one of the few times the whole town came together, with local businesses setting up booths, families bringing their kids, and everyone pretending that our little Rust Belt community still had a future beyond nostalgia and government subsidies. This year, I had special plans for the festivities. Plans that would make the basketball game confrontation look like a warm-up act. I arrived at the block party early while volunteers were still setting up. The morning air crisp with the promise of autumn and the faint smell of industrial decay that never quite left Sullivan's Forge. As one of the event sponsors, my auto shop contributed every year, which gave me access to the sound system and the main stage. I'd learned long ago that money bought more than parts and labor. It bought influence. Mind if I test the microphone? I asked Blair Martinez, who was organizing the event with the frazzled efficiency of someone trying to herd cats while balancing a budget. Of course, Brock. You've been such a help with the setup, she said, barely looking up from her clipboard. Blair was good people, the kind who actually cared about community instead of just talking about it at election time. I tapped the microphone and my voice echoed across the empty lot. Perfect. The sound system was quality. Professional-grade equipment that could reach every corner of the old mill grounds. Nothing but the best for Sullivan's Forge's last hurrah. By noon, the party was in full swing. Families filled the space between food trucks and game booths, kids running around with balloons and cotton candy while their parents nursed coffee, and tried to pretend they weren't checking their phones every 5 minutes. The local high school band was playing on the small stage, earnest teenagers in matching uniforms doing their best to make Sweet Caroline sound fresh. Tessa arrived with Chloe around 1, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. No Wade in sight, which wasn't surprising. Apparently, their relationship hadn't survived the HR investigation and the subsequent workplace gossip. Funny how quickly office romance wilted under the harsh light of professional consequences. I waited until the band finished their set, letting the anticipation build like pressure in a boiler. Then, I walked up to the stage, my heart steady as a metronome, ready to deliver the performance of my lifetime. "Excuse me, folks," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying across the crowd like a call to prayer. "I'd like to say a few words if that's okay." The crowd turned toward me like sunflowers following the light. I saw Tessa's face go white as fresh snow as she realized what was happening, probably wishing she could sink into the asphalt. "My name's Brock Sullivan, and most of you know me as the guy who fixes your cars when they break down. But today, I want to talk about fixing something else that's been broken. The truth." I pulled out my phone, holding it up like evidence in a courtroom. "See, I recently discovered some interesting information about my family, information that I think you all should hear." "Brock, don't do this," Tessa called out from the crowd, but her voice was lost in the murmur of 300 people who smelled drama like sharks smelling blood. "A few months ago, I found out my wife was having an affair with her boss. That's not news to most of you. Small town, big mouths, you all knew before I did." A few people laughed nervously, the kind of uncomfortable laughter that comes when someone speaks uncomfortable truths in public. But what you didn't know is how I found out. See, it wasn't hotel receipts or lipstick on a collar. It was Instagram. My daughter showed me a video from her mother's bachelorette party in Vegas. I held up my phone, connecting it to the big screen behind me through the PA system's video connection. Modern technology was a wonderful thing when you knew how to use it. This is my wife of 17 years at her bachelorette party with 4 different men. Not just dancing, and I think you can see what I mean. The crowd gasped as the images displayed, murmurs rippling through the gathering like wind through wheat. Tessa was pushing through the crowd now, trying to reach the stage, but people were packed too tightly, forming an unwitting wall between her and damage control. "But here's the thing," I continued, warming to my theme. "When I confronted Wade Thompson about this, you know what he told me? That maybe if I'd been more of a man, my wife wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. I paused, letting that sink in. Like oil into concrete. Well, Wade, you were right. If I'd been more of a man, I would have ended this marriage the moment I saw those photos. So, that's what I'm doing now. I reached into my pocket and pulled out divorce papers, holding them up like a trophy. These were filed this morning. Tessa, you're officially served, in front of God and Sullivan's Forge. The crowd erupted. Some people were cheering, others looked shocked, and a few were already pulling out their phones to record the moment for posterity and social media. One more thing, I said into the microphone, scanning the crowd like a hunter looking for prey. Wade Thompson, I know you're here somewhere, hiding behind that funnel cake stand. I pointed to the edge of the crowd, where Wade was indeed trying to blend in, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. Wade, you wanted to be part of this family so badly. You wanted my wife, my life, my reputation. Well, congratulations. You can have what's left of it. But now everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. Everyone knows you're the type who seduces married women and then runs when things get complicated. Wade broke into a run, heading for his car like the parking lot was on fire. Oh, and Wade, I called after him. Check your car before you drive it. I may have forgotten to tighten a few bolts when I fixed it last month. He stopped running and turned back, his face pale with fear. Just kidding, I said, and the crowd laughed. I'm not a criminal. I'm just a mechanic who's very, very good at his job. I set the microphone down and walked off the stage. The crowd parted as I made my way toward my truck, some people patting me on the back, others just staring in amazement at what they'd witnessed. As I reached my truck, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to see Chloe running toward me, tears streaming down her face like a broken faucet. Dad, wait, she called out. I stopped and looked at my daughter, really looked at her. 16 years old, confused, manipulated by adults who should have protected her, and finally seeing the truth about the people she'd trusted. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry about everything, about what I said, about choosing them over you. Sorry's a start, I said, but words are cheap, Chloe. If you want to rebuild this relationship, you're going to have to prove it. How? By growing up, by understanding that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences hurt people you love. She nodded, wiping her eyes. And by understanding that I'm not the same man I was 6 months ago. I'm not going to be a pushover anymore. Not for you, not for your mother, not for anyone. Get in the truck, I said. We drove home in comfortable silence, but when we pulled into the driveway, I made an announcement that surprised even me. Chloe, pack your essentials. We're leaving. Sullivan's Forge. What? Why? Because sometimes the best revenge is building something better somewhere else. I'd already made the arrangements, sold the shop to Cole, transferred Chloe's school records, found us a place in Denver where I could start fresh with a classic car restoration business. But this is home. Home is where your family is, and you're the only family I need. 3 days later, we quietly disappeared from Sullivan's Forge. No dramatic announcements, no goodbye tours. Just a father and daughter starting over, leaving behind the wreckage of lies and betrayal for others to clean up. I'd learned something important. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to your enemies. It's what you do for yourself. 6 months later, Sullivan Classic Restorations was thriving, Chloe had made new friends, and Tessa was still in Sullivan's Forge, trying to explain to anyone who'd listen how her husband had just vanished like a ghost. I'd finally mastered the art of the quiet vanish. Sometimes the best way to win the game is to stop playing and build a better one somewhere else.